Hello and welcome to EV Car Share. So it's been a while, I haven't done one of these videos, seems like a couple of weeks, maybe a bit more, and there's been a good reason. So it's summertime and we went on our family holiday. So our family holiday this year was to Cornwall, and yes, we took this EV, the Kia EV6 that we have. We are a two car household. We have my wife's car that she uses, and the girls, got 18 and 20-year-old daughters, they all use to go around the town and that sort of stuff. It's a petrol Suzuki Swift, quite a small car. Obviously, family of four, all our stuff, no way we're going to take that down to Cornwall for the holiday. And of course we have this car, which is the EV6. It's perfect for long journeys. Yes, I did say that. So that's kind of back to front to what most people think of. They think, okay, I'm going to have like a petrol car for long journeys and an EV for around town, and that's going to be your best balance. Now, if that's your choice, that's your choice. But I do mine this way around. We have the petrol car for the kind of around town, because we've always had it, and the girls were learning to drive, so we wanted to keep them able to use a manual, learn to drive in a manual, pass the test in a manual, so they had all options available to them rather than having the EV. Learning to drive in that. And then we have this car, my car, the one that does all the miles. That's the EV. That's where it's most useful. I mean, you're going to save per mile, aren't you? That's where you're saving the EV, on electricity rather than petrol, and that's how you're going to get the best use out of an EV. So we took this down to Cornwall, and this video is some of my musings, ponderings, thoughts, experiences, conclusions about taking an EV on a family holiday down to Cornwall. You may have noticed on social media at times there are some people who will say, well, the infrastructure's not there, you can't charge. What happens if you are middle of July or August, peak summer holiday season, and you want to go down to Cornwall? I've seen Cornwall picked out quite a few times as being this nightmare scenario where you head off down on your family holiday to Cornwall and there's queues of people waiting to charge at the charge points, and there aren't many, and so on and so forth. So yeah, I thought, why not? We'll give it a go. I'll brave it, and I'll see what it's like. It wasn't my choice to go to Cornwall. That was put open to a family discussion. That's what they came up with, or we all came up with together. So it wasn't my EV experiences directing where the family holiday went. It just happened to coincide and became an opportunity. So, as I say, this is my musings. So point number one, let's go straight into that charging network one. So charging network, charged to 100% at home, of course. It's just over 300 miles down to where we needed to be, down near Foy. Yeah, opposite side of the water, in fact, in Polruan. And that meant that we needed to have a charge on the way down. Now, it's about 6 hours, so it's probably good to have a stop anyway, kind of halfway-ish, about 3 hours in, 2-3 hours in. And I wanted to stop at Gloucester Services because I'd heard about Gloucester Services. I'd heard about the farm shop and the real food and all of that sort of stuff. And I wanted to see it for myself. So that's why I picked out Gloucester Services. I kind of forced the family into enjoying a stop at Gloucester Services on the way down. Due to fitting in with other family requirements or other requirements of the family, we didn't get out from Peterborough until about 11:30. So it was a late lunch stop. So we stopped there for lunch, we went to the deli, we got some food from the deli, we ate it by the lake, and all of that time while we were there, car was plugged into one of the charge points. I chose Tesla on this occasion rather than the ones from Westmoreland, which is the people who own the services, because the price was slightly lower. I could have got a faster charge on the Westmoreland ones rather than the Tesla ones, because of course, as lots of people know, the 800 volt architecture in these cars is not directly compatible with the Tesla. It means you charge a little bit slower than you otherwise would. But we were stopped for lunch. It didn't really matter. I mean, if you're stopping for 35 minutes, Does it matter whether your car's charged in 15 or 30? Really irrelevant, because by the time you come to your car, it's charged either way. And so that was the philosophy here. We're stopping for a decent amount of time, don't actually need a lot of charge, don't need to fully charge. I was only down to about 60% going from home to Gloucester. So I only really needed to put 30% or something like that in to carry on the journey. So that's what we did. I moved the car as it got to 90 something percent, which is actually before we left, so moved it to a different space to let other people charge. Then we carried on our journey. There was no waiting, there were no broken charges, and that was the general experience all the way down to and around Cornwall in general. There was no waiting for charge points for me, and there was no broken charges. Didn't come across a single one, except on the way back. That comes out later. Got down there in Polruan where we were staying. There was no car parking at we had a little fisherman's cottage down by the harbour, which we were renting out for the week, 10 days. And there was no parking there. You had to take your car up to the village car park to park, and then go up and down the hill when you needed your car, which is fine. I mean, that's obviously not EV related, that's for any car. But one thing of note, the car park in the village did have 2 charge points. I did see them being used, they obviously were functional. I didn't use them because for me they weren't necessary, and also they were a bit more expensive than what I would have wanted to use. Had you been, I don't want to ever wait a moment for my car to charge, in that mindset and willing to pay the extra, then charging in that car park would have been just perfectly fine. What did we do? Well, there were several times when we were out towards kind of Bodmin way, and in Bodmin there is, near to the retail area, there's a Morrison's and Asda there. I think there's a B&M and McDonald's. In the car park near to the McDonald's there are Ionity charge points. I think there was 12 of those, and there were Instavolt charge points. There's definitely 12 of those. Now I used the Instavolt ones because Instavolt are having a summer special, and that summer special means that on selected charge locations they had reduced their price down to 50 pence through the app, or 54 pence if you use your contactless card. And so that was in the ballpark of what I consider to be a reasonable price. So I was quite happy to support their efforts in offering a reasonable price by taking advantage of that reasonable price, and I wanted to do that and kind of show my support for them if they choose a reasonable price. So several times when we were in that area, one time when we were up on Bodmin Moor, one time we went to the supermarket, went to Morrison's next door pretty much, to do our shop for the week, and another time just before heading home on the final day. Those 3 times I went there and charged at the Instavolt charge points there. Again, all of them working, lots of availability, no queuing, no waiting, nothing like that at all. In general, my charges were about 20-25 minutes in length. That was usually because we had plugged in, gone into the McDonald's, had a coffee, or we were doing other things. And by the time we came out, that was how long it took. We never sat in the car waiting for it to reach a certain percentage. I never went to 100%. It was always 80, 90, something like that, whatever it had got to by the time that we were ready for it. Now, yes, we did have to plug in, and we didn't have to go and get a coffee, but we did go and get a coffee because we had plugged in. So the naysayers out there will say, yeah, but that's something you're doing because the car has forced you to do that, blah, 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 etc. You could look that way. If I was completely against that concept, then I wouldn't have charged there at all, and I would have spent the extra and charged in Polruan in the public car park of the village, obviously. Other charging notes, well, we went to Eden Project one day. In the car park, we noticed at the corner of the car park there were charge points. According to the Kia information, they were up and working and available. So we could have used those as well as an option while we were walking around the Eden Project. We didn't, as I say, have explained our charging strategy for the week, but we could have used both the Eden Project car park while we're there and also the car park in Cornwall, the little fishing village, while we were there. Another point of note, I was interested as to, okay, Cornwall has a couple of car charging points in the village, so if you're down in that tiny kind of rural corner of the south coast, you could charge an electric car. It kind of crossed my mind, well, where's the closest petrol station? So I did a Google search on the closest petrol station and it's not close. So if you were down in Pole Run and you didn't want to, you took a petrol car, for instance, instead of an electric car, you would find yourself in that village with no way of filling it with petrol. You would have to go somewhere out of your way, if you were staying there potentially, to fill up with petrol. Or you'd have to plan ahead, make sure you had sufficient petrol to get back out of that area through the little winding narrow country lanes in order to reach a petrol station. So that was a good point of note. You may think that it takes a bit to charge your car in Cornwall. It can take a bit of effort or planning to fill your car with petrol in some parts of Cornwall too, so don't let that one go unmissed or unnoticed. We went to Newquay also, up at Newquay, north coast. We were on the south coast. Up at Newquay, we went surfing. On the way in, I noticed there was MFG charge points available. They were, according to my car's information, they were available, they were working. I could have charged there if I'd wanted to as well. There was no need, I had plenty of charge at that point. We drove around quite a lot. Don't need to charge all the time, only when it gets pretty low. And generally I charged around 20-30% and back up, as I say, to 80-90% as and when needed. On the way back, again, stopped at Gloucester Services. Same sort of idea, plugged in with a Tesla, went inside. Everyone needed the toilet by that point. We needed some more water because we'd run out of water in the car. And we needed to buy a few cereal bars for some pack-ups for people's work the following day after we got home. So again, stopped long enough that charging on the Tesla charge point was going to give us plenty. It actually gave us a little bit too much. We came out, it was over 70%. Had it been down at maybe 50%, then I would have returned home with only like 5-10%, which is the perfect way. But I returned home with nearer to 30% in the end, which means I've overcharged a little bit too much on the stop. So clearly that was an occasion where the car was waiting for us, not we were waiting for the car. So that's point one. That was my experience of charging on the journey down to Cornwall. So number two in my experiences of driving this EV in Cornwall, the narrow roads with the high hedges and all the thorny bushes. And if you've driven down there, you know what I'm talking about. They go steep up, they go steep down, they've got lots of twists, they've got real narrow, really high hedges. You can't see around the corners, you don't know what's coming. It's stop-start, it's passing places. If something's coming the other way, you may have to reverse back and pull in and so on. One thing I noticed was driving an EV makes it very easy compared to something with gears. Now, obviously, if you have a petrol or diesel, it's an automatic, then that's probably the same experience. But of course, an EV has a real good torque and acceleration as well. So if you find yourself having to stop suddenly and then up a steep hill suddenly, or manoeuvring or doing things quickly, or bursts of acceleration and deceleration, actually the EV, the way it drives, or at least this EV, because this is the one that I have and the one that I've used, really makes that really quite easy to do. There's no fumbling with gears, there's no getting in the wrong gear, there's no straining on the engine. There were times when in our little house we were at the bottom of a very steep hill, And there were times when we would be sat in the house and we'd hear an engine struggling or revving, whatever, trying to get up the really steep hill out of the village. When you're changing gears in a petrol car like that on a steep hill, you have to take the engine to higher revs than you normally would before changing, because during that gear change you lose momentum, and as you're going up a really steep hill you lose momentum so much quicker, and you can be in a position where you are going fast enough to be in the next gear up, second usually in these cases, but by the time you've popped it out of gear with the clutch on and got it into that gear for second, your revs and your speed have dropped so low that second is no longer the ideal gear for that hill anymore, because you've slowed down. None of that in an EV. You just put your foot down, it goes. So steep hills, difficult twisty lanes, the torque on the EV is really, really good. However, talking about this one in particular, this is quite a wide car. So if you are not very good with spatial awareness and positioning your car, it can be a bit difficult. Now, we didn't have too many problems. We didn't have any situations, but it just became aware to me that some people might have. If you're going to drive those little narrow streets, little narrow roads, country lanes with passing places and high hedges, then you may want to take a narrow car if possible. If you do it often, if you're buying a car down there and it was an EV, then you might want to look at the stats. Not buy a car quite as wide as this one, because this one is really wide. The other thing, these wing mirrors. There is a button down here beside me on the panel on the side of the car. Yes, it's a button. It's not done via a screen in the middle. It's not a Tesla. I've got buttons throughout. There's a button here to fold the mirrors in. Now, that's great. I like that. That's brilliant. However, what I don't like is it doesn't allow you to activate it until you're below 10 miles an hour, which is really annoying. I mean, you can be down, you see a car coming, you think, okay, I'm slowing down, I'll activate the wing mirrors. Nothing happens. Nothing happens. So only once you're down to below 10 miles an hour, which is really, really slow, that actually anything will happen. And once you get going, and you go above 10 miles an hour, above 20 miles an hour, you can go 60, 70 miles an hour, they don't pop out again. It's not like they're forcing you to have wing mirrors at high speeds. If you've closed them at 0 mile an hour, or 2 or 3 mile an hour, and then you get going on a motorway, it's still happy for you to have them closed. So I don't understand the whole concept around not allowing you to close them until you're below 10 mile an hour. That's really, really stupid. In those situations where you're passing cars tightly through little gaps, it can be useful just to fold those mirrors in, and so that part is quite annoying. Now, with EVs, you'll hear that people talk about range anxiety. The one anxiety I did have a little bit on holiday at times was paintwork anxiety. So this is the matte paint, the matte steel grey option on the Kia EV6. It's no longer available, but it was on the original one. And being a matte paint finish, you kind of think, not quite so sure, will it get scratched a bit more? There's some of those kind of concerns. And when you're down those little lanes and you're pulling really closely into the hedge in order to just let the local bus go past, or a cement mixer or something like that, obviously these things do need to travel down these lanes as well. You're squashing into that hedge. Boy, does that give you paintwork anxiety. So no range anxiety, but definitely some paintwork anxiety. So that's point 2. We're talking about narrow country lanes. Right, on to point 3. So point 3 is that vehicle to load is really good at the beach. So for anybody who doesn't know this car or doesn't know EVs, vehicle to load is a system where you can access the power from the battery in the car when you're parked in a car park, and output to a domestic socket. So in the UK, that's a 3-pin domestic plug. And so with this car you can plug something into that socket and you can run that device. It might be a kettle or a coffee maker or an electric blanket or heated throw, or power up a laptop or charge a drone, or whatever you want to do. Anything with a 3-pin socket, obviously up to a limit on the power output. Now various cars have vehicle to load and various cars do it better or worse. I think the Kia system was probably the best one at the time that it was available. I'm not sure if it's been beaten since then, maybe it has, but the Kia one, you get to about 3.5, I think it's a little bit over 3.5, maybe 3.6 kilowatt output maximum. Now 3.6, that's enough for a domestic kettle. You don't have to buy a travel kettle. It doesn't have to be like a low power version of a kettle. It can be a proper fast boiling domestic kettle, and that's really good when you've been on the beach all day or you've gone for a walk up the coast path, which is what we did. You come back to where your car is parked and the cafe at the car park is closed, and everybody's either come off the beach, they get a bit cold now because it's late in the evening, or they've come down the coast path, or maybe it's even been raining or something like that. After all, you're on the Atlantic coast, it does rain quite a lot. In Cornwall, it's warm, but you do get a fair amount of rain. So you come back to the car park and you fancy a coffee, and that cafe's closed. Now, not much you can do about a closed cafe, you just have to suck it up and stay cold. Except you don't, because you've got a vehicle to load in your electric car. So you can just plug in the kettle, boil the water, put out some coffee into your cups, pour out some water, and you can all sit there by the beach in the evening enjoying a nice coffee before you finally pack up and head home. Really good. We used it after a walk from Talland through to Polperro. Spent the day in Polperro. It was a rainy day. We sheltered from the rain. We ended up being quite a warm day, so we weren't wet when we got back to the car. We could have been. If things had been slightly different, we could have been. But we still enjoyed some time on the beach and a coffee overlooking the sea. At least two of us did, the other two didn't want coffee. But there you go, some people prefer tea. I didn't happen to have tea with me, all fresh milk of course. But yeah, the two of us enjoyed coffee. Really nice experience to sit there by the beach, have your coffee, play the game on the beach, and nice ending to the day, which wouldn't quite have been as good or possible if we didn't have that ability to boil that kettle and have the drink. Makes it all the better. So that was point 3. The vehicle to load is excellent at the beach. So that's it really, 3 points. Charging network is there, it's great, it's fine, had no problems. But if you want absolute convenience, be prepared to pay a little bit extra so that you can charge your car in the car parks or wherever most suits you. If you want to save a bit of money, then you may have to take a bit of inconvenience. That's your option, that's your choice. Point 2, little winding roads. EVs are great. This EV may be a little bit big, depending on how good you are at driving and fitting through little gaps, stuff like that. Wing mirrors are annoying. Point 3, vehicle to load, excellent for the beach. So those are my 3 takeaways from my family holiday down in Cornwall. Let me know what your thoughts are. Have you done the same sort of trip? What was your experience like? As I say, always, this is me sharing my experience. I'm not guaranteeing you the same experience, I'm just sharing what I have experienced. I hope you enjoy my videos. If you do, then please subscribe, please like the video. As I say, add your comments, and hopefully I'll speak to you next time.